go through, Stephen. And when we go through these three levels of faith, I think God meets us where we are. And so if you're not careful and you're in the wrong setting, someone will try to tell you to be like them. You know, I hear folks say, well, you just got to pray about it one time, preacher, and then you believe it and walk away. I said, well, you just ain't went through nothing. Some of the stuff I went through, man, I need to pray all night long for some months and some years. I don't know what you're talking about. One time and it's over? Man, you ain't been through nothing yet. There are some things in life that will so burden your heart, that will bring you down to a broken knee. There are some things in life you need God. I want you to know there are three areas of faith that I believe that we're all in, and God deals with us on that level. The first area we see in this text is a sensory faith. That's a sensory faith. Jesus says here, if you look at that 48th verse, except ye what? See signs and wonders, you will not believe. The man went to Jesus. All right, now some of y'all been in Bible study over there in the 4th chapter of Mark. There was a man who, 5th chapter of Mark, and there was a man whose daughter was sick. He went to Jesus, wanted Jesus to come to the house and heal his daughter. His name was Jairus. But in the midst of that story, a woman stole the show. Remember the woman that had an issue of blood. Did she need to get in the presence of Jesus? Was that going to heal her? No. She not only, Stephen, needed to get in the presence of Jesus, her theological state where she was, it says she needed to touch him. She needed to touch a garment upon which he was wearing, so she needed a sensory touch. Sometimes when I pray with individuals, I pray with them over the phone. But sometimes individuals find themselves in such a troubled state, you have to get on a plane. Same prayer, same God. You have to get on a plane and walk in the room and give them that smile and touch that hand and pray with them. Sometimes we need a sensory connection to believe the almighty power of God. There's nothing wrong with that. I want you to know that Jesus is saying that's not the highest level of faith. Jesus is saying, I want you to grow from this baby stage that you need me to physically be there. Well, we go somewhere else in the gospel. We find that there was a man who had two sisters, and that man had become very ill, and they sent word to Jesus. Jesus, the one that you love, he's a little ill. And Jesus, if you can come, we're talking about what kind of faith here? Sensory faith. Jesus, if you can get here, we know you can heal him. Well, the Bible says Jesus tarried a couple of more days. And within that time frame, the one that he loved, the brother had died. So the brother died, and now Jesus, what does Jesus want to do? Now he wants to show up on the scene. So Jesus shows up on the scene. Now, they had faith, am I right or wrong, to go get Jesus? Yes. They had faith when the condition of the brother worsened and worsened and worsened. Did their faith wane? The answer is no. They believed that if Jesus could get there, if Jesus' presence could be here, and in the midst of the waning moments of sickness, it did not matter, provided he got there at a certain point. So Jesus, that's sensory faith. So Jesus gets there, he gets to the moment, and they believe that their faith has no longer any power because they have a sensory faith. But what did Jesus do? Walk out the room? What did Jesus do? Leave them there? What did Jesus do? You should have believed. What did Jesus do? I can't believe you're doubting me. If you're listening to me by way of radio or television or some social media, here's what I want you to know. God is real. And God is used to dealing with real people. God understands that sometimes you're going to doubt. God understands that sometimes you're going to give up. God understands that sometimes being in this human arena of ours, sometimes we just need a touch. And he understands that, and he reaches out, and he'll touch you just where you are. Now, what do I mean by touch? Some of us right now need God to move in the area of our finances. See, the gospel I preach is real. The gospel I preach, it has a life application. Somebody needs to see God move in the area of their finances. I will believe him if he moves for me. Father God, I'm about to be evicted. Young man came here last week. He had an eviction notice in his hand. And he expected me to give him a check or some cash or something of that nature. I smiled. I said, I got a word for you in a minute, boy. That word gonna change your situation. But what kind of faith did he have? He had a sensory faith. He needed to see at that moment a check miraculously come out. Cash miraculously come out. And then he could walk out the door and say, there is a God. He had a sensory faith. I want you to know that God will meet you where you are. It's okay to be where you are. God will be what you need him to be when you need him to be it. Now, if I was in the old country church, I'd preach that to you a little bit. You know, I talk about that when you need some water in the middle of a desert, he'll be a well for you. We'll talk about how when you need him to heal you in the midst of a sick room, he'll be that doctor. When you need him to advocate for you in the midst of a capital murder case, he'll be your lawyer. When you need him, I'm talking about he will be what you need him to be when you what? When you need him to be. That was a woman in the Bible who had a child. And Abraham and that woman had a child together. Y'all know the story of Abraham and Sarah, but there was another woman there. And there was another son. Y'all know the story of Isaac, but there was another one whose name was Ishmael. And so Ishmael and the woman was sent away. It looked like they were going to die, looked like they were going to squander, but they needed some water. And old Jesus came and appeared as H2O. I want you to understand that God will be what you need him to be when you need him. When you need him to be it, man. You got to get that lesson now. I don't care what you need. Because see, we're in a what? Sensory realm of our faith. And we need to see God move in a special way. You know, it's good to be a baby Christian. You know, it is. Because God will move in your way. You go, wow. You know, when you have big kids, you have a child that's 21, and you've made a meal of steak and potatoes and, I don't know, maybe some asparagus. How about that? And you tell that 21-year-old, it's in here, come get it if you want to eat. But you tell that 3-year-old, come on, mama fixing your plate. You cut the steak up real nice and easy. You make sure them mashed potatoes real loose for them. And instead of asparagus, you probably got some other kind of soft stuff for them. And you might feed them, come on and eat now. Boy, it's good to be a believer on any state. I want you to understand that now. It's good to be 21 on the phone, not hungry right now, but you know when you want it, it's in there. It's good to be 45 or 55 and at work when everybody's eating, and then you get home, you know it's in the microwave. See, no matter what scope you in, you know that God put you in the pot. Do you see what I'm saying? And I want you to see this gospel. I want you to see that Jesus is not simply chastising them and turning his back on them. He's telling them, I want you to grow. You've seen the water, the wine, and I ought to be enough for you. He said, but since it's not, I'm going to reveal myself to you. There's another place in the 6th chapter of Judges. And this old friend of mine, you know, we friends, me and this old fella here. We've been friends a long time. And I like talking about my friend. And if you look over there in the 6th chapter of Judges, you'll see this old friend of mine. You know what I mean? And this old friend of mine, in the 36th verse, He just had that old sensory faith. I want you to understand that we all go through that. We all start with sensory faith. If you're there, don't worry about it. It's all right. You got to start somewhere. You know, you got a whole lot of churches that need the preacher to lay hands on. I understand. You need some. You got sensory faith. You need me to take this oil and rub it on your head. I understand. I'm not mad with you. It's all right. Because it's a point of what? Connection. Sensory. Just a Cliff Notes version. There ain't no power in olive oil now. It ain't no power. But it represents the flowing of the Holy Spirit in your situation. And when we're in a sensory place, it's okay. But this old friend of mine, look at what it say over here. It say about my friend over here in Judges chapter 6. And Gideon said unto God, if thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said. Now, if God told you something, it shouldn't that be enough? You know, that's enough. And then we come to church, and the preacher say, God told you he gonna do it. Now you believe him and going on home. Man, that's hard. That's hard. So this brother say, as you said, behold, I will put a fleece of wool in the floor. And if the dew be on the fleece only, and it be dry upon all the earth beside, then shall I know that thou wilt save Israel by my hand, as thou hast said. He says, I cannot agree simply with thy word. But if you will do something that only I believe you can do, if you let the rag be wet and the floor dry, I'll know there's a God. Then he goes a little bit further. If you let the rag be dry and the floor wet, I know there's a God.